Hey guys, it's Codiak here with Livid, and today we are checking out Dam Battlegrounds. A lot of you guys had access to this map as part of the server slam ahead of launch, but I brought Livid along because he has over 100 hours with Arc Raiders in the year and a half that we have been testing this game, working with Embark, giving them our feedback, and we really wanted to break this map down for you guys because a lot happened in this match that we think will provide you guys some gameplay tips, some strategies, and just some general rules of thumb to get better at this game. So, Liv, what's going on, man? Talk to us a little bit about Dam Battlegrounds.
Oh, Dam Battlegrounds is, I think it's going to be a lot of people's favorite map, I think, long-term, honestly. It has a lot of nice open areas that, between big POIs that can really catch people off guard, a lot of long-range combat there. And then as you get closer to, the main POIs, it turns into more hectic, close-range combat. So, SMGs, some ARs, shotguns, those be pretty prevalent. LMGs, be using a lot of that stuff around there. So there's a lot of cool places to loot, a lot of cool elevation changes, but there's also a lot of open space that you can really get caught off guard.
Yeah, we get spawned pretty much at the edge of the map, and you can see right at the top of the screen once we get out of the loot here. We came into a fresh map, and that's something that I really want to call out first, is that these maps are kind of on a rolling cycle. Liv, talk to people about that, just in case they don't know.
Yeah, so not all maps are 30 minutes. Some are longer, some are shorter. But for Dam Battlegrounds, usually you'll spawn into a map, and if the timer is around 30 minutes, that means the map is like a fresh server spinning up. So everybody that's entering the match at that point has a fresh map. There's new loot to be had. There's, what's it called? There's, all the enemies are kind of fresh on the map. There's nothing that's really been touched yet. So because of that, you can go in and your objectives are kind of what POIs do you want to hit? What rare loot spawns do you want to get right away? Stuff like that. This will operate on a rolling system. So as you get closer down to, I think, the 14 to 15 minute mark, squads will still spawn in over time as other squads are eliminated. And once you hit that 14 to 15 minute mark, it'll stop spawning in additional squads. So you'll have additional people coming in and joining the map from different spots all throughout the map, basically.
Yeah, and so the first thing that really happens to us in this match is we come up on a surveyor. This is a really interesting, not really an offensive mob. It's really unique in the sense of it's one of the strangest arcs in the game. Maybe give people a little insight into what this thing is all about.
Yeah, this thing's kind of, we like to call it the little loot goblin of Arc Raiders because, loot goblins love to run away and they're always full of stuff that you want to break out of them. So for this thing, it's pretty heavily armored. You kind of need medium to heavy ammo, ideally heavy ammo, to take them out. And as you approach them, they'll get scared and they'll run away. If you can approach them from a distance and you see them kind of sitting still and they open up to reveal an antenna, when they're in that state, you can throw a heavy grenade at them, like a heavy fuse grenade or any other kind of impact, and deal significant damage to them, almost sometimes outright killing them. But most of the time, if you approach them with just weapons, they're gonna, button up and take off running. Now, if you back them into a corner, they will tend to spin up, target a person that's closest to them, and ramp at them, kind of almost like a Sonic the Hedgehog attack. And that could deal almost your full shield, sometimes half your health and damage. So they can hurt, but most of the time, as long as you're not really backing them into a corner, they're not going to be offensive against you. But the reason you want to take these things down is they break off so many fragments that each one of those fragments that you break off, you can tap to get a bunch of components. You can get a bunch of XP from each thing, and then what you're ideally looking for are these surveyor vaults, which are there's usually about 3 to 4 of them on a surveyor at a time, and each one of those things will break down into mechanical components, and those are very, very valuable things to have, if anybody knows, when it comes to repairing weapons or upgrading weapons.
Yeah, and so Liv's talking really about the surveyor itself, but there's a lot of tactics that go into actually approaching the surveyor. You see that we're not just blindly chasing this thing. We're scouting. We're being, we're staying low to the ground in a crouch. We're trying not to draw a lot of attention. We did get aggro of that Hornet before, but we're still being tactical because right now we are wide out in the open. We can get ambushed from any direction, and I think that's a really important part of, even the PvE parts of this game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right to our left over there, we're not looking at that right now, but right to our left is where there are 2 different spawns that can happen. One from farther to the left and one more to the northeast from where we were looking. And, as I said, this map is rolling and we're already at the 25-minute mark. So there's already been 5 minutes have passed. There could have been a squad that's already gotten eliminated, and that could trigger a spawn over there of players. Or there could just be a group of players that are just over there still looting that are coming this way. So at any time, you could be caught off guard by people coming from the edge of the map. So you always want to be a little careful when you're doing stuff like this.
Yeah, and you see Livid kind of move away from the group. Myself and Grin, we're looting the Surveyor, and as Livid mentioned before, there's a lot of loot to engage with. And important to point out that no matter if you take anything off of a container or not, every time you loot a unique container, you're going to get XP. So every time Livid comes in here, whether he takes a piece of loot or not, you see in the left-hand side that he's getting XP for scavenging that container. That's a really important tip, and if you want to supercharge your leveling, that's a way to do it. But you'll also notice that Livid was kind of providing some overwatch there, right? While Grin and I were looting that container, he was watching our backs, because if 3 of us have our heads down in a container, you know, we are sitting ducks for an ambush.
Yep, and there's been plenty of times that has definitely happened.
Yeah. So now we're moving over to kind of our next objective here, and it's really important that whenever you go into a match, we talk about this in our upcoming Ultimate Beginner's Guide, we talk about this in our Wish I Knew Sooner Tips and Tricks series. You want to have a game plan. It sounds so corny, it sounds so cliche, but you want to have a game plan going into a match, because this is an extraction shooter, right? It's not just about wiping squads off the map, it's about that long-term progression. So Liv, give people an idea, for maybe those who haven't been on Dam Battlegrounds, what our long-term plan is from this point out until we extract.
Yeah, so this part right now is when the drop down was still pretty much available for the control tower, which was, well, you know, one of the most valuable loot rooms in the game. It's got like weapon crates, a bunch of red lockers, ammo crates, stuff like that up top there. And there was a drop down that you could do to land on a ledge and get inside and bypass the key card. Since then, they said that this has been patched. So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to get to the under the bottom entrance that is way less traveled than other places. So most players will come from the top lobby area, or they'll climb up into the main administration building and work their way to the tower and breach in like midway up. And that's where all the fights usually break out. But there's another entrance down at the bottom here that if you can get in the bottom and sneak in and breach this little area, you'll be able to get through this door and take a secret entrance up, essentially.
Yeah, Livid almost just got his head taken off by this leaper enemy here. One of the more elite enemies in the game. Not the most elite, but one of the more elite enemies in the game. When you think they can't jump far, they can jump even farther than that. They're a really fun enemy. One of the I would say top 5 elite enemies in the game currently. And in this case, we decided not to fight it. And I think that's also important to point out, is that you don't need to fight every arc in this game, right?
Correct. And it essentially functions as a watchdog. So if we're going up and there's another team that does come down behind us, like really shortly hereafter, they'll alert this thing, you know, and we'll know that they're there. So what we're doing right now is inside this elevator shaft, there are turrets that usually spawn on the walls on the way up. So we're making sure we take at least one of those out that's close. That's like it spawned lower, because they can spawn randomly up there. So we took the lower one out just to make sure that if it does detect us while we're halfway up, it's not going to start shooting at us.
Yeah, and right about here, when we come up to this spot, notice what our squad does, right? We're about to hold these corners, and we hear an enemy team breaching, right? And this is where the action really picks up for us.
They're not expecting a team inside here, because we took this bottom entrance, and just like that, we clean up, you know, the whole squad that's sitting there. And usually when we take this entrance up this way, even if we're not going this direction, we tend to leave this door unbreached. So that way, you know, any squads that are still making their way to us as we're going up, they can, you know, they're going to have to spend that time breaching. And that just gives you a little more time. You can hear the audio cues and stuff like that. So it gives you a nice warning system that players are following shortly behind you.
Yeah, and we're about 10 minutes into this match, so we know these guys were going to have, you know, at least some sort of gear, and it's a great opportunity to really restock on, you know, anything that we were low on, whether it be bandages, arc power cells, shield rechargers, and scoop up any, you know, uncommon, rare, or potentially even, you know, epic scavenged, you know, materials that they found.
Yep. And right there, you know, I was just watching the hallways there while they were looting, because you never want to have everybody looting the same thing at the same time. But, you know, just watching your corners, it's a third person, there's long corridors here. So, you know, a lot of people will take sniper rifles down this hallway, you know, and if you have a close range weapon, you can't do much. You just have to fall back. So it's always good to have somebody watching.
Yeah. So now we're going to go up the elevator, and there's something really important at the top here. Another turret. We're actually going to leave this one alive. And again, that kind of continues the trend of creating these traps and these sound cues for us as we're up in this main room.
Yep. It's very easy to avoid this top one just because it is so high up. If it was one that was a bit lower, it would definitely do damage to us. So it's kind of like a judgment call. You got to decide which one you want to take out. And like up here, usually you saw a shot at that security camera. I didn't know if it was active or not. Oftentimes we'll leave those security cameras untouched because, again, that gives you another audio cue when players walk by. But just in that instance, you know, if there were people following behind us, breaking that doesn't let them know that we're up there. So it's a judgment call what you want to do.
Yeah. So we're about to breach onto the roof, and you're going to see 3 enemies, 3 pods that explode if they reach you. One thing that I want to call out, because I am guilty of not shooting them when they're right on top of me, you're actually not going to take damage from that explosion if you kill them before they're able to do their explosion animation. You can see that both Grin and myself took a ton of damage. Livid didn't, but he killed his pod when it was right on top of him, right? So anytime you see those enemies, you want to kill them. Doesn't matter if they're 5 feet away, 10 feet away, or right on top of you.
Yeah, you'll take 0 damage if you pop it right on top of you. So it's nice. As long as they don't get off the trigger themselves, you're safe.
Yeah. So this is the drop down. This is the exploit that we believe was patched. This is just part of the server slam. The devs said they had a lot of fun watching people play this and do this kind of exploit. But obviously, you know, so far they've been really quick at patching these types of things. But this is one of those keycard only rooms. You're going to find keycards in some maps when you're looting, and those keycards could be for completely different maps. So Liv, talk a little bit about that, the loot people can find here, and why these areas are so high value.
Yeah, so you always want to be watching out, like Cody said, for these keycards. And oftentimes, if you have a safe pocket, you know, on yourself as you're going through these maps, that's kind of where you want to drop them. So you always make sure you extract them. The loot that you're going to find inside of here is you're often going to find weapon crates. You're often going to find red lockers that have high value loot. What else are you going to find in here? Usually ammo crates. You know, it's just a bunch of stuff that's really high value. There's sometimes high tier crafting components, stuff like that. What you really want to pay attention to, though, is there are night raid variations, you know, of each map at random times. You know, there'll be a rolling kind of system where it'll modify the map. If you bring these keys into those night raids, those loot rooms are going to be even more juiced up. So you want to, you know, it's kind of a judgment call. If you're really hurting for materials, it might be good to run one of these rooms. If you're not really hurting for stuff and you want to get better loot, save them. Save them for when night raids come around. You are going to fight a lot more resistance with players and stuff when that happens, but at the same time, if you come out, you're going to come out way more juiced than you would have normally.
Yeah, and you're never going to know what players are actually going for these rooms, right? You don't know which players and which teams are loading in with key cards. But again, it kind of goes back to having a goal when you're going into a round, right? If we have a key card and we know we want to utilize that key card to get high value loot, like Liv said, you're going to find gun cases, ammo cases. You're going to find a ton of rare, possibly epic materials, blueprints. I think that's a huge part of this too. You know, part of the systems in Arc Raiders is crafting, right? It's all part of the progression system. This is where you're going to find all of those valuable materials, recipes, etc. But to Liv's point, this is also an incredibly intense part of the map, right? We're already in a high loot area, which is going to be crawling with players, but now you're in an even more secret and even more, you know, loot loaded area, and that attracts the attention of players.
Yeah, loot goblins everywhere, right?
Yeah. So you're going to actually see us. We're going to fight off 2 teams here on our way out. And what you'll notice, we're taking our time looting. We're obviously listening to whatever else is happening in the entire tower. And like we mentioned already, the directional sound is so good in this game. You can hear things from halfway across the map. We can hear when doors are being breached below us. We can hear those firefights. And I think a really important part of this is taking it slow. Right? You're going to have teams, you're going to have players that are going to rush from point to point. That is not how Arc Raiders really works, right? And you're going to start seeing us have fights right about now as we start peeking our way out of this door.
Yeah, and it's important to note, we left this door locked so that way, you know, no players could flank us until we were ready to come out. So.
Yeah, and Grin already pops his head out. He already gets a kill. And now we're going to kind of go back and forth with the enemy teams down here.
Yeah, and you'll see that the one guy was starting to crawl away. If you have the opportunity ever during a firefight that somebody is starting to crawl away and you can safely peek out and deal damage to them, always do so because it's going to deplete their health way quicker and keep them from getting back to their team where they can be revived. You know, the last thing you want an enemy team to do when you're in a situation like this is be able to revive their teammate. It puts them back on an even field with you if you guys are both healing up, and you ideally want to be in the situation where you're in a 3v2 and you have an edge against them damage-wise.
Yeah, we also have a map advantage on them right now, right? We have that one room which we were holding, and we have this long hallway, and that's why we were kind of aggressive here. We knew that if we pushed them back, they're pretty much in an elevator shaft. They don't have a lot of places they can go, and we got a good angle on them. We knew it was a 2v3, and we were able to push them and easily take them out.
Yeah, and like stuff like the LMG, stuff like the Anvil, using something like a Bobcat, those things all really excel in these close range environments, especially when you have people that are pretty much backed into the corner. Like they can go down, but the chances of them going down and running into another team is very high. So, even when we're stuck in those situations, going down is something you don't really want to do, but you're still in a situation where if I threw a grenade in there, it would catch them off guard. If I push around the side with a close range weapon, it's going to catch them off guard, but always make sure when you're doing these kind of things, you're also swapping shoulders and stuff like that. It's a very important thing that, I don't think people talk about very often. And I definitely see people that are even streaming that are not, swapping shoulders when they're fighting. And I think Cody can elaborate a little more on why that's extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a third-person game, right? And right here, Livid almost gets caught off guard by another enemy team coming up the zip line, taking him out. It's amazing he didn't die there. But what you'll see, to Livid's point, is, we're hugging these corners and making sure that we're only peeking our gun out, right? You want as little of your body peeking out from behind these corners as possible. That's the advantage of playing a third-person game, especially one where, that tight gunplay is really important. Grin gets a little ambitious here. He's pushing the enemy, making sure that they stay in that hallway. And we kind of go back and forth with this team. And you'll see that even though they have kind of a suboptimal position, like right there, Liv gets popped. It's just part of the game. You can see that Grin's kind of on the other side of the door. I'm going to try and get the revive on Liv. And you actually see the enemy team come into our hallway. And what he's doing is actually pinging us, tagging us for his teammates to see what is their position, right? If you're knocked, but you're not dead, you can still provide, value to your teammates.
Yeah, it's risky for him to do something like that because, you could toss a grenade at him. You could light him up with an LMG and just kill him instantly. But at the same time, if he got off a significant enough ping there and really communicated to his team, he could have told them, that two of us were down. Like, it shouldn't have been hard for two other players to push in the room and just finish off one player. And they made a definite mistake by not doing something like that. You'll see that they start tossing grenades. Cody goes down. And we're still in a situation where it's, it was a 2v1. Now it's down to a 1v2 right now, and really reading those situations and understanding, when a flare goes up, that somebody's knocked down. When you see a shield break, someone only has a little bit of health left usually because, as you take damage on your shield, you're also taking damage to your health. And that's like another thing that I also want to bring up is you'll see some of us at this time when we're healing up and stuff like that. Even if our shield is fully broken, if our health is not above half, we will always bandage first because damage will always pass through your shield. That you'll have like a 40% or 50% damage mitigation. That still means, 60 to 50% of that damage will pass through and hit your health. So if you have only a sliver of health and a full shield, even if they break one little bar of that shield, you're losing the rest of that health, and that shield mattered absolutely nothing. So you always want to make sure you are topping off your health in these fights.
Yeah, and this is a really great example of understanding kind of the ebb and flow of combat, right? They could have pushed us hard here, and they could have easily wiped us. They took too long. We're all coming back. Livid's got full health, full shield right now. I'm half and half. Grin's got half health. He's clearly regenning some of his health, but we also have the room advantage, right? We have elevation on these guys. They have to run through this kill box here just to get an angle on us. And you're going to see in a second, they're going to try and pop in and rush the position. It's not going to work. And that's because, one, we're holding great spots, and two, because we actually have an advantage in the location over the enemy team.
Yeah, and you'll most of the time when you push these kind of positions, I always recommend having like a smoke grenade to get in without people being able to see you. And you'll see I was able to laser down one guy. I took a significant amount of damage. And right here, I'm trying to deal some, additional damage. You'll see we kill him, so that way he couldn't get back out that door. Now I'm throwing a grenade, ideally, to make anybody who's hugging a corner back off, and that should give, our teammates enough time to heal. Grin, I think he ran out of shield rechargers at this point. And I think that's why he went to loot that body right away, is because he needed a shield recharger. And, that at that point, when you hear the looting sound, because again, if you're listening for those audio cues, you hear somebody loot a body, that's your cue to open a door and pop the guy looting the body, which they did. So, there's a lot of stuff here that play that you got to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I mean, he got a great angle on you there. Obviously, he was peeking. You could barely see him. Got a great angle on you. But what you'll see again, they're tossing grenades. They're not really accurate with those grenades. If they push us right here, they've got a 2-on-1 advantage and they're not pushing, right? Again, we have a really great angle on them from the room itself, having just a little bit of elevation. That guy's clearly holding the corner. And what you'll see is there's teamwork, right? There's micro teamwork happening where, I'm holding a corner, providing a little bit of cover while Grin or Livid is reviving the other. And we're just trying to get our team back to like somewhat functional as a 3-man stack, because regardless if we have half health or full health, we're going to be more effective as a unit as compared to individuals.
Yeah, and the longer these fights go on, you'll see it's starting to alert Arc. So we're in a situation where we really need to push out. We really need to kill that last guy just so we don't deal with stuff like, the Arc's flooding the room. And luckily we do. We kill both of the people that are on the outside and, we take the fight here.
Yeah, and as you see by the timer at the top, like the whole match is pretty much done at this point, right? We've been on this map for about 20 minutes, and anybody that's left is either full up on loot, or they're also starting to think about extraction, right? So we are taking the time to kind of replenish our stores. And Liv, you have a really great philosophy for those that may get overwhelmed by raider corpses or containers that have a ton of loot. Like, what's a good rule of thumb for beginners, especially as they start getting into these raider fights, about like what things they should be taking from these bodies and what things maybe they should either not take, come back to, or whatever?
Yeah, my rule of thumb whenever we get into a fight or shortly after a fight is, even if there's like the coolest purple weapon or keys or all that stuff, I just ignore it entirely and I go straight for the resources that help either refill the ammo on my weapons or allow me to get enough materials that if another fight breaks out, I'm going to have enough resources to sustain myself in that next instance, right? Some other players in your team might not have that philosophy. They might want to be grabbing the weapons and stuff because maybe they came in with a free loadout and they need a better gun. I think at least one person on your team should always have the mindset of going for those healing resources, and even to the fact that they could just hit every body really quick and grab everything, and they can drop stuff to people later on in stacks. So I think really making sure you secure all those resources, because again, if a team pushes in this hallway, even if we've only gotten a few of these things, if they take this hallway and they're holding this hallway, they now have all those bodies to loot themselves. And if you've left all those healing resources and you took the weapons, which are not really going to help you in this situation, they're going to outlast you and really push into you and take all your loot. So I think it's always a good rule of thumb to take the healing and sustain resources, things like grenades, things like ammo, before anything else. If you know you're safe, then you can go back for the more critical stuff.
Right. So at this point, we're again, the clock is ticking. We've got 7 minutes left. One of the extraction points is about to close in less than 2 minutes, so we're not going to make it there in time, especially because what you'll notice is we're still taking it slow. And I think that's really important to once again point out. We're not just rushing down the zip line. We're not just rushing to extraction. We still have enough time, and we are now fully loaded with important salvageable material, resources that we can use for crafting and progression. We don't want to just completely put the blinders on and try to get to an extraction point, because who knows, there could still be, and very possibly could be, enemy teams still out there.
Yeah, especially down at the bottom. This is why you'll see me checking here, but it's very likely there's often a team still waiting down there, because if they hear gunfire happening up top, there's almost no reason to push the top of the elevator. It's better just to wait for that team to come down. And there are some tricks you can use here to like avoid players and stuff. We don't do them here, but there's some stuff you could do. Like, instead of taking this zip line down, you can jump off that ledge, bypass this area entirely, and as you're falling down, angle yourself to fall towards another zip line down there and grab that bottom zip line on your way down. So you could bypass this level altogether, never get in a fight with anybody, but then you also run the risk of there being a team waiting at the very bottom. So at all times, you kind of want to gauge it, we're full on loot. We got to do this stuff. We got to make sure we get to a location where we can hold a position.
Yeah, and this ending stretch here, this is what Liv was talking about before. This is a really dangerous part of this map. This is a wide open area. This is where a lot of teams will traverse as they're trying to get to the control tower. You see Livid swap his shoulder there just so that he can check that corner, because, I mean, look at all of the lack of cover here, right? He can get shot from any different angle, almost 360 degrees of no cover. But at this point, with 5 minutes left on the clock, we have to start thinking about extraction, especially when both of our options are, 400 meters away.
Yeah, we always seem to put ourselves in the situations that everything near us closes down wherever we're at. And that area like Cody was mentioning, is a spot that really does break out in fights a lot because, again, like we said at the beginning, a lot of players don't go to that bottom entrance to go up. They often fight through that front lobby to get into all the rest of the part of the building, like because there's the scaffolding that leads up, there's the main lobby with the zip line up, there's the back entrance that leads right to the tower. Like that's a heavy traffic zone, and most times, unless I'm trying to get out of here quick and get somewhere else, I won't even touch that location because it's just too much open space and too much of an opportunity for you to get collapsed on by multiple teams.
Yeah, and Liv, you just made a little bit of a mistake there dropping down. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that actually caught me off guard when we were doing this because before you could actually like walk down it and you wouldn't slide, but they've since added a bit of physics to these little angled parts and you will slip off very easily. But what I was trying to do is approach the edge so that way I can drop down, grab a ledge, pull myself up, and then roll down. So that way I took no damage falling down. But obviously that didn't work because that caught me off guard there.
Right. And in this situation, not a big deal, right? We're not fighting anybody. There's nothing going on. But, if there's a couple arcs on you, you're fighting an enemy team, that little bit of damage that you took, that could have made a big deal. That could have been the difference between life and death.
Yeah, that could have literally been my health if I had no shield on,
So at this point, we're running towards extraction, but you see there's still some strategy. Even though it's loose strategy, there's still some strategy about how we operate, right? You see us running from cover to cover. You see us not just full on sprinting to the location. We know we still have 3 minutes left. We're within the 100 meters. We're very close to the extraction at this point, but we're still using all of the senses, right? We're looking, we're listening, and we're making sure that, enemies are not just waiting at extraction, because that's a very good strategy for this game too.
Yeah.
Wait at extraction, wait for, other teams to show up and pop them.
And I think that really does come into play too. Like if you're leaving the map around like 15 to 16 minutes, you won't have to worry about that as much as when you're leaving the map at around the 3-minute mark. Because don't forget, those players that come in around the 15, 16-minute mark, like as a fresh spawn, like halfway through a round, their objectives in the map are very different from people who come in on a fresh map where they have everything to loot. The players that come in halfway through are more than likely going to go for players and try to get their loot instead, because that's 15 minutes of time that they never got to spend looting, so why not take it from somebody else?
Yeah, totally. And right now you see Livid is pretty much just full on in cover, right? And this is actually a good point to talk about cover versus concealment. He's actually in concealment right now, right? Cover provides protection, concealment just hides him from view of enemies. So he's using that, the auditory signs in the game, listening for enemy players, but sitting in that concealment to make sure that no other teams can spot him, right? And still providing us valuable information about if anything is going on around him.
Yeah, and we always pop smoke grenades too when we take these upper hatches, because it makes it hard for players to snipe you or rush in and know exactly where they're shooting. So,
yeah, lots of fun in Dam Battlegrounds, and of course, a good extraction.